When New York Giants quarterback Tommy DeVito came crashing back down to earth against the New Orleans Saints, it was simply further proof the NFL backup quarterback hype machine was in full effect once more. They have spent the past 2 weeks or so hyping up a player who we all know was destined to fail, and now they will all go back to pretending as if DeVito never existed. Look, make no mistake, I'm not blaming Tommy DeVito or Joshua Dobbs or any backup quarterback who gets caught up in one of these hype whirlwinds. No, this is a situation contrived entirely by broadcasters, pundits, and football talking heads who should know better. On the scale of ridiculous NFL hype, we're not at threat level midnight here. This isn't Tebow in New York by any means. That being said, it's still really annoying. I'm Cheyenne Hollis, this is the Touchback, and today we have a plea to those in the NFL media. Stop wasting our time with backup quarterback hype. Backup quarterbacks are fairly interesting if you sit down and think about it. They represent equal parts hope and fear. They're essentially the football version or the football equivalent to life insurance. You don't want to use it, but having it can be invaluable. Their role is unlike anything else we have in sports. Sometimes you get a passer like Kurt Warner or Brock Purdy who just happens to be in the right place at the right time to forge a successful career. Others, such as Nick Foles, Doug Williams, and Jeff Hostetler, have helped their teams win Super Bowls. Most, though, are simply stopgaps to get a team through a couple of games when the starter goes down. Even then, they don't always succeed in that role. See Stick, Easton. Here's the deal, though. I don't mind giving these players their 15 seconds of fame when they do get thrust into the spotlight. Most of them have interesting stories worth telling. The problem is that the narrative keeps skewing from backup quarterback with an interesting story to somehow this player is now the answer at quarterback for whatever team they're playing for. In other words, this just isn't a guy with an interesting story. This could be the guy. It is a stupid waste of time that ignores reality. We have volumes and volumes of evidence that shows us backup quarterbacks are rarely the answer at the position for any team. The story tends to play out something like this. The backup comes in, has a good game or two, falls flat on their face, and then goes shuttling back to the bench. There is not only nothing wrong with this, but the logic of it actually makes sense when you sit down and think about it. Backup quarterbacks are unorthodox in many cases, and there isn't a lot a defense can do to prepare for them, especially if they don't have any pro tape available. That first game, or even those first 2 games, can be difficult for a defense to understand what they should expect, and this usually reflects in the results and the performance of the backup quarterback. Once there is tape on players for opposition to study, well, they can then better prepare, execute better defensive game plans, which almost always see the second stringer become befuddled. Yet the NFL media cannot help but put these guys on a pedestal when they do come in and perform well in that first week or 2. Somehow, these backup quarterbacks are just hidden gems, diamonds in the rough, finally getting their opportunity to shine. Not only that, but somehow this small sample size, these 1 or 2 games, are somehow proof of concept that the backup quarterback just may be the team's answer at a position or may deserve a shot as a starter somewhere else. Don't take my word for it though. Let's go over some recent examples. During the weird pandemic season, Washington football team was just cycling through quarterbacks in hopes of finding something at the position. Eventually, it was Tyler Heineke who got a shot, and his start just happened to come in the NFL playoffs. The color commentator for this wild card weekend showdown between WFT and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy, by the way, horrible at color commentary. I am so happy NBC is not letting him do this for the playoffs anymore, because he was not an interesting or an engaging or even a remotely competent color commentator. Like, people hate on Chris Collinsworth, but man, I would take him 11 days out of 10 over Dungy. Putting that rant to the side, Dungy spent the entire game trying to convince viewers Heineke was somehow the long-term solution for Washington football team. It was forced, it was laughable, it was just ignoring the reality, not just the reality of the situation, but the reality of the play on the field. Sure, Heineke had a couple of moments out there, but the good old football team never led in that contest at any point and didn't actually look threatening to the Bucs. The closeness of the scoreline didn't reflect the disparity of quality between the two teams. What's more, what Heineke did on this day was clearly wild and unsustainable. Yeah, the plays were interesting to watch, but this wasn't something that was going to be replicated over the course of a 16-game NFL season. This is a fact, of course, that has borne out over the course of Heineke's NFL career. The Old Dominion passer is fine in short spurts, can come in and win a game, but over the course of 16 games, he's going to lose you a lot more than he wins. This year, we got a double dose of backup quarterback hype in the form of Joshua Dobbs. Man, some of these NFL talking heads have the memories of goldfish. In case you forgot, Dobbs started the season in Arizona, had a few good starts, upset the Cowboys, and then all of a sudden, we heard talk about, maybe the Cardinals have something with Dobbs. Maybe he can come in and challenge Kyler Murray. Maybe he's going to be an answer for the team, despite the fact that he has proven nowhere in the previous stops of his NFL career to be a viable starter. All of that talk dissipated almost overnight when he crapped the bed on several occasions, eventually got benched, and then traded to the Minnesota Vikings. Surely we had to have learned our lesson here, right? Yeah, not so much. The same exact scenario played out with Dobbs again only a few weeks later with Minnesota. We had a couple of good games, a lot of talk about how, maybe the Vikings didn't need Kirk Cousins. Maybe Dobbs could be their long-term answer at quarterback. Some terrible starts, and now Dobbs has gone from this darling of the NFL to an afterthought. That, by the way, is not an indictment on the quarterback. He is a very capable backup quarterback who can come in, perform in a pinch, but should not be seen as a long-term answer. And yet the NFL media just wanted to insist that, maybe Minnesota, I know the Arizona thing didn't work, but maybe in Minnesota, this was going to be different. How are we not learning from our mistakes here, people? That was bad, and that was annoying. However, for me, the absolute worst case of this backup quarterback hype, well, it can be found with one Mike White and the New York Jets. Of course, it's going to involve the New York Jets because any story about quarterback is amplified to the 100th degree with him. In case you don't remember, the New York Jets unexpectedly turned to White in 2021, who pretty much tore up a Cincinnati Bengals team. Everyone started freaking out, claiming White was going to be the franchise savior, that this was the guy, that Mike White, after one good game, and despite a history of a backup quarterback, he was the franchise QB. So about that, well, White went out 1 week later, got smashed by the Colts, and was never heard from again that season. When he did reemerge for the New York Jets, it just happened to be as a starter against a very bad Chicago Bears team. You're probably feeling a bit of deja vu at this moment, and for very good reason, might I add. This story ends exactly how you think this story ends. White got the start against the Bears, did pretty well. I mean, it wasn't as good as his start in the previous season, but he got a win, put up some impressive numbers, and then the media spent the next few days hyping him up, talking about how he needed to be given a chance, so on and so forth. Of course, he was then given a start the next week, laid an egg. He got to start the week after that, laid an egg, and Mike White has never been heard from again, and he's currently in Miami backing up Tua. We have plenty of other examples of this in action, by the way. There's Nick Mullins in 2017 in that random start he got against the Rams, Brandon Allen. I mean, the moment a backup quarterback comes in and plays well, there are people in the NFL media sphere who want to proclaim him to be the next big thing. To a certain extent, I get it. This is sort of the nature of the backup quarterback position in the National Football League. I also have zero problems with those out there in the NFL media world giving those backup quarterbacks a chance to shine, telling their stories. Josh Dobbs, great story. Tommy DeVito, a great story. There are plenty of cases to be made to give these guys a microphone and give them their spotlight for 15 seconds or whatever. We just can't end it there, though. There are people in the media who want to proclaim that, Tommy DeVito, despite his underwhelming credentials to play in the NFL, is somehow going to be a viable player for the Giants moving on. That somehow, for some reason, Josh Dobbs, a career backup who has a track record of coming in spot starts and doing well, will be a long-term solution to the Vikings. This nonsense is what needs to stop. That's because on the rare occasion a backup quarterback does come in and proves to be an answer for a franchise, well, those same talking heads cannot wait to rip them for their perceived shortcomings. I mean, look at Brock Purdy. Last year, Brock Purdy was a darling, the backup quarterback who's coming in, overcoming the odds, etc., etc. Now, all we hear about from those same people are that, well, Brock Purdy's not that good, he's a game manager, blah, blah, blah. Look, I could care less whether you think Brock Purdy is MVP material or not. That is irrelevant to me. But I don't agree with you basically hyping him up 1 year for being this plucky underdog overcoming the odds and then using that same thing against him a year later. Like, Brock Purdy went from, oh man, backup 7th round pick, how cool, to Brock Purdy, 7th round pick, isn't MVP material or whatever the case may be. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. Like, why are you, NFL media, so quick to build up a backup quarterback, and then when they actually succeed over the long term, not for a week or two, but for a season, for multiple games, you want nothing to do with them? That is nonsense. Joshua Dobbs, Tommy DeVito, Gardner Minshew, Jake Browning, these are all great stories, and they've all had their moments this season. Make no mistake about that, and they do deserve credit for coming in and winning games. But this nonsense about how they're going to be the future for any team in the league, it's just misguided. It's a waste of time. It's just blowing hot air for the sake of blowing hot air. Let's just stop. Come on, people. We know what happens when backup quarterbacks go into games. Maybe they perform well for a week or two, but almost always they come crashing back down to earth. The NFL media's backup quarterback hype machine is in full effect once more, but goddamn, it's time someone pulled the plug on it. Anyway, that does it for me. I'm Cheyenne Hollis. This is the Touchback, and as always, hashtag take it out to the 25.